Hi, my name is Brandy Joan, and today we are sewing up my reusable flower tote pattern. This bag is perfect for the farmer's market, or if you're gifting someone a bouquet and you want to add something a little extra special, this is it. So the first thing you want to do is look at your instructions. You can keep them on your phone, your computer, or you can print them out. Either way, just have them handy. It's good to reference even when you're watching the video. They also go a little more in depth into supplies that you need, like what is necessary and what's optional. Interfacing is one of those optional supplies. However, I do strongly recommend it. It does make a big difference when it comes to the structure of your bag. Once you've gone over your instructions, go ahead and print out the first page of your pattern and check that the test square measures accurately. Once it does, you can finish printing out your pattern and start taping your pieces together. The pattern is labeled with numbers 1 through 4 or 5, depending on which layout you're printing. All you have to do is line page 1 up with page 2, and there will be a slight gap in between pages, as you can see here. That is totally normal and accounted for. As long as the lines match up, you are totally good to go. There's no need to trim any of the margins, just start taping the pages together. Once you've taped all of your pages together, go ahead and grab your scissors and start cutting out the pattern along those lines. Once you've cut your pattern out, you should have 2 pieces that look like this. The rest is done with measurements that you can find in the instructions, and I will let you know again in this video, so don't worry. Now you can start cutting out your pattern pieces, and you're going to cut both of these pattern pieces on the fold each time. Once the pattern pieces are cut out, go ahead and transfer all of those markings from your pattern onto the fabric. You want to make sure that you're getting those boxes and the X in the middle, plus the dots that will show you where to place your straps. Now, bring over your webbing and cut that into 2 24-inch long strips. Once you have both of your straps cut, you want to measure 1 inch in from the short edge and then draw another box with an X on all 4 ends. Okay, now that we have all of the markings down, we're going to finish the edges of the straps. If you're using nylon webbing, you're going to use a lighter. Please be careful. Carefully burn the edges to prevent fraying. If you're using cotton webbing, you can use a zigzag stitch or a straight stitch to finish the edges. You do not need to use a lighter. In fact, you should not use a lighter. So make sure to double check what kind of webbing you have and finish them accordingly. Then fold the edge under by 1 inch. Clip it in place if you're using nylon webbing. If you're using cotton, you can give it a press and then clip it in place. Then bring it over to your sewing machine and sew it down using a basting stitch along that raw edge. Now place the ends of each strap over the X markings on the right side of the main fabric base panel. Remember to switch back to a standard stitch length if you just finished your basting stitches. Then sew around the edge and then sew the X through the middle. It does help a lot to pivot at the corners, so you're going to lift your presser foot up, keeping your needle down. Pivot the fabric, and then put your presser foot back down and continue sewing. Repeat those steps until you have all 4 ends of your strap sewn down. Double check that they're not twisted. Once everything looks okay, you can go ahead and remove those basting stitches. And lastly, to finish up our main fabric base for now, we're going to fold up that lower small edge that's curved by 1/2 inch and give it a good press. Okay, so we're folding that up towards the wrong side of the fabric by 1/2 inch, and then we're going to baste it in place. Set your main fabric base aside for later, and we're going to bring over our pocket piece. And we're going to start by narrow hemming the top edge. And you want to do this by folding down the top edge 1/4 inch, and then again another 1/4 inch. Pin that in place and give it a good press. If your fabric is giving you trouble, go ahead and fold 1/4 inch down, give it a press, then fold the 1/4 inch down again, and then give it another press. The pressing with each fold will give you a nice, crisp, clean edge and be a lot easier to sew. Then bring it over to your sewing machine and sew 1/8 inch away from that folded edge. Continue working with the pocket piece by folding the bottom edge, that rounded small portion, up by 1/2 inch and giving it a good press. It will take a bit of working, but it is possible. Curves are usually a little bit difficult, but because this is a small portion, it's totally doable. Don't worry. Once you have it pressed, bring it over to your machine and sew it down using a basting stitch. Bring your lining base piece over and do the same thing to that curved bottom edge, folding up 1/2 inch to the wrong side. Then baste it in place. So now both bottom edges should look like this once they've been basted in place. Bring both of those pieces over and you're going to place the pocket on top of the lining base piece with the right side of the lining base touching the wrong side of the pocket. So you want both of the right sides facing up. Pin along that outer edge and sew down just the sides, securing that pocket in place. Now that your lining is all set up, it's time to attach the ties, which will act as the closures for the bag. You can make your own ties if you'd like. I do have measurements in the instructions if you want to do that. However, for this, I'm going to be using some pre-made ribbon, and I'm going to cut each piece to 20 inches in length, and I'm going to cut 4 of them. Once you have all of your ties cut or sewn up, you can go ahead and grab your aglets or your charms, whatever you're using to finish the edges of these ties. As mentioned in the instructions, this step is not necessary, but it does add a nice professional touch. So I am applying aglets to mine, following the instructions that came with the aglets. You basically just put the strap inside and then close it up, and you're good to go. Repeat that process with each strap. You only need to finish one end, so you're going to need 4 aglets to do this. Now, using the dots we made on our pocket piece as a guide, we're going to place our ties right where those dots are, making sure that the long end is facing in. We don't want the strap facing out, okay? So we want our raw edges touching. The raw edge of the strap touching the raw edge of the fabric on the bag. Pin all 4 of those in place and then baste them down. Now we're going to join our lining with our main fabric by placing them right sides together and pinning along that outer edge, then sewing with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And when sewing, you want to make sure that all of the straps and ties are tucked inside and you're not catching them with any of the stitch line you're making on the outer edge. And we will be leaving that bottom hem open, the curved hem where we folded up 1/4 inch on all of the pieces. That we will not sew closed because we are going to pull everything right side out through that gap. And before you bring your bag back over to your cutting table, make sure that you sew a 2nd row of stitching along that outer edge because we want this bag to be super reinforced and strong because we will be pulling it out through that gap and it is going to get a lot of use, hopefully. Next, trim that excess seam allowance. This did end up hurting my hand, so it might hurt your hand because we are cutting a lot of thick layers of fabric, but that is a good sign. If your hand hurts, it's a good sign. Trim all that excess off, and then we're going to turn the bag right side out through that little gap that we left. It is a bit of a struggle, I will say, but it is very possible, and I have done it many times. You can do this. I believe in you. Once you have everything turned right side out, go ahead and give it all a good press. And now we're going to whip stitch that lower gap closed. Make sure you have a nice strong needle and strong durable thread for this step. And once that gap is sewn up, go ahead and remove those basting stitches and you're done. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and you love your new flower tote, and I will see you next time.